there! If you're planning a trip to Grand Teton National Park, here are 5 things that you'll want to know before you go. My name is Ash. I'm a former park ranger and the founder of Dirt in My Shoes, and I know that you deserve an incredible national park vacation, and I'm here to help you make it happen. So let's talk all about the 5 things that you need to know before you go to Grand Teton so that you can get a jump start on your trip planning and make it the best trip ever. Let's get started. Number 1, Grand Teton National Park has some of the best hiking in any national park. So I might be a little bit biased because I've grown up visiting Grand Teton. I worked as a park ranger at Grand Teton, so I absolutely love this park. My love for this park runs very deep. But the reason that I love it so much is because there is a hiking trail for every single person. You can get out, you can see gorgeous views, you can experience the essence of Grand Teton and being out here in these mountains, no matter your age or skill level or ability. What's cool about Grand Teton is you've got trails that are down in the valley, and so those ones typically stay a little bit flatter and easier. And so that's trails like Taggart Lake, you've got trails to Phelps Lake, you've got Hidden Falls, you've got the Lakeshore Trail. There's a lot of really nice, easy hikes that lead to lakes or mountain views and that will provide some great wildlife viewing. But then if you're ready to really kickstart your hiking and you're wanting to get into the mountains, then there's definitely a trail for you in the mountains. And so what I like about this is you can choose your skill level based on where in the park you hike. If you stay in the valley, it stays pretty easy and flat. But if you're ready to go into the mountains, then that's when you'll hit those epic day hikes that just provide the most spectacular views. Some of my favorite day hikes in Grand Teton are the hike to Surprise Lake. That one's one of my favorites. It's a shorter hike, but it gets you into the mountains really fast. I really enjoy going up into any of the canyons, Death Canyon, Cascade Canyon, Paintbrush Canyon. All of those hikes are just absolutely phenomenal. And then you've got the Teton Crest Trail, which is a longer trail. You'll do it over a couple of days. You'll be backpacking back in the Tetons and just soaking in those spectacular views around every turn. So there are so many great hiking trails in Grand Teton. It's a good place to get your feet wet into hiking if you're hoping to get started and you don't want anything too hard. But if you're a seasoned hiker and you're looking for something difficult, you'll definitely find it there as well. The second thing you'll want to know before visiting Grand Teton is that this national park is very seasonal. So what I mean by that is that you won't find everything open all year round. So Memorial Day through Labor Day is typically the high season in Grand Teton. However, if you're hoping to get into the mountains, a lot of those trails don't thaw out until about mid-July or so. And I've even been hiking in the backcountry and have hit snow even into August. And so if you are wanting to get back into the mountains, you'll want to keep that in mind for sure. Temporary closures are common during the shoulder season. Shoulder season is typically like the month of May as you're coming into June, and then the months of September and October as they're kind of leading into the winter. So Grand Teton has a really long winter. The shoulder season can be extremely unpredictable. You just never know. I've been there over Labor Day and have gotten snowed on, or I've been there the end of September and the weather is perfectly nice. So you just really never know what you're going to get. So as you're planning your trip, just make sure to keep that in mind. A few more notes about the seasonal nature of this park. November and April are my least favorite times to be in this park. That's because the main park road is still closed, but it's not open to skiing or anything like that. So there's not much that you can do in the inner park area during those months. The outer park road of the park does stay open year-round, weather permitting, so you can get to some of the views and things out there. But if you're wanting to do any winter activities or any summer activities, then I typically like to avoid the months of November and April because you can't do either seasonal activity during that time. Grand Teton also has an amazing winter season, and so if you do want to see the park in a different way, you can come during the winter months. I typically like to be there around the January or February time. If I'm looking to do any skiing, you can do cross-country skiing in the park, or you can ski in the town of Jackson just outside of the park. They also have a big sled dog race that comes through in January. There's lots of good snowshoeing. You can go tubing. There's lots of things that you can do in the Grand Teton area during the winter. If you're looking for more specific information about the best time to visit Grand Teton and what to expect each month, check out the post that I have on Dirt in My Shoes. I'll walk you through the weather to expect. I'll walk you through month by month what will be open for you and what you'll be able to do in the park at that time. Number 3, be sure to book your lodging in advance. So Grand Teton can be a little bit difficult to get lodging reservations. It's gotten a lot busier over the past few years. In addition to that, they've also switched all of their campgrounds over to reservation only within the past couple of years as well. So you will need to make reservations in advance if you're hoping to stay in the park. But the good news is that you've got the town of Jackson just right outside of the park. And so if you're not able to get anything in the park, you'll have some options just outside of the park as well. Your lodging in Grand Teton opens up 12 months in advance. And so you'll want to make your reservation as close to that year mark in advance as you can if you're hoping to stay in one of the in-park lodges. Those do fill up pretty fast. It's not as competitive as some other parks, but I would definitely say that if you're hoping to stay in the park and you've really got your heart set on one of those in-park lodges, then definitely try to make your reservation at that 12-month mark if you can. For the campgrounds, those are typically 6 months in advance, and you will need to be on there to make your reservation right at that 6-month mark because those campsites do fill up really fast. They get snatched up real fast. So again, just if you can make those plans well in advance, then you'll have a definite advantage when you're trying to get your lodging reservations. Number 4, Grand Teton is crowded. So Grand Teton is not as crowded as Yellowstone. Yellowstone's close by, but over the past 5 years or so, it really has been discovered and it sees a lot of visitation now. It feels busier than it ever has, and there are a lot more people that are spending more time in Grand Teton than they ever have before. Grand Teton sees millions of visitors every year. It's always in the top 10 most visited national parks. And so you will want to pay attention to when you're trying to get where, when you're trying to go through entrance stations, finding parking, when you're driving from place to place. Your timing makes a huge difference on whether you get stuck in crowds or not. So some of the things that you can control if you're hoping to cut down on the crowds or on how busy it feels while you're there. You can control what time you're trying to go through the entrance stations. And there definitely are slower times of day that you can go through those entrance stations without getting stuck in lines. So if you need any help with that, I can definitely help you with that because I worked in an entrance station at Grand Teton. So I do know a lot about the entrance patterns and kind of how the crowding happens throughout the day. You can control how many off the beaten path or quieter stops you add into your itinerary so that you're able to find some solitude throughout the day. You can also control what time you're trying to get to those busiest spots because if you're trying to get to the really busy spots in Grand Teton during the busiest times of day, then you'll for sure be circling parking lots and having a hard time finding parking. If you want to know exactly what I do when I go to Grand Teton and how I avoid having to circle parking lots or having to wait in entrance lines, then you can pick up a Grand Teton itinerary from Dirt in My Shoes. This is a fully planned out trip itinerary that walks you through hour by hour when to be where to avoid the crowds. And number 5, Grand Teton is only 8 miles from Yellowstone National Park. So isn't that crazy that you can hit both Grand Teton and Yellowstone within the same trip? They're right next to each other. And so it's a really cool area to visit, and you can see both parks at once. Looking at the map here, you'll notice as you come out of Grand Teton, you go through what's known as the John Rockefeller Jr. Memorial Parkway, and that's that 8-mile stretch of road that then connects you to the south entrance of Yellowstone. Grand Teton National Park is not as busy as Yellowstone, but it's also no longer an afterthought. So people used to just come to Yellowstone, they'd plan their trips to Yellowstone, and then realized that Grand Teton was right there. And so a lot of people would just dip down into Grand Teton for the day or drive through it on their way out. But that's really no longer the case. People are specifically planning trips to Grand Teton. And so again, that's why it feels a little bit busier. That's why it's seeing more crowds now. But it's super convenient that both of the parks are right next to each other. You can really see a huge variety of things. There's so many activities you can do in this area because you can visit both parks. My one word of caution with this is that you'll definitely want to treat each park as if it's separate. So if you're planning a trip to both Grand Teton and Yellowstone, I definitely recommend booking your lodging separately and not trying to stay in one place to see both parks. So I know it's tempting to want to stay in one place to see both parks, but I would strongly urge you to not do that because you will be spending a ton of time in your car if you do that. Yellowstone is huge. Most people severely underestimate the amount of time that it takes to drive through Yellowstone. And so if you're staying somewhere closer to Grand Teton or trying to stay kind of in the middle of the two parks, then you will be driving for hours sometimes to get to the various points of interest. Grand Teton is a smaller national park, so you don't need as much time in Grand Teton if you're also hoping to go to Yellowstone. So I do recommend just booking a couple nights down by Grand Teton. You can stay in the Jackson area or anywhere in the park if you want, and then booking your lodging up in Yellowstone to focus on Yellowstone. Okay, so there's the 5 things that you definitely want to know before you go to Grand Teton. If you need any help at all in this trip planning process, just know that I am here to help you. You can click on over to Dirt in My Shoes and I will walk you through all the things that you need to know to plan a spectacular trip. I am so biased when it comes to Grand Teton, and it is important to me that you have the best experience ever so that you'll love this park as much as I do. Again, please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. Click over to Dirt in My Shoes to help get the trip planning process started, and I will see you out on the trail.